Welcome to Living Gets Real. I am Ashwini Vedakan. Joining us this week is Shanuki De Alwis. But before we get into the show, here's a little sneak peek into her amazing life.
Famous thing of Kalunang Katai in this country and this part of the world, especially South Asia, we have this humongous issue with the fact that our children might be born dark, because God forbid if they are born dark skinned, whoa, you know, who's gonna marry them, and a number of like different social issues that we attach to God-given melanin. So I wanted to talk about it today, and that's the topic of colorism. I know that it's been an issue since the day I was a kid. I've been so conscious of it in school and all that, this whole kalui sudui, this thing that you hear from teachers or wherever you go also, okay, yeah, I have fairer skin tone, right, than average in Sri Lanka. And then this whole value that people sometimes attach to me, I get annoyed sometimes, you know, like suduine e hinda hondai, like WTF.
Welcome to the show, Shanuki. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Shanuki, let's start with women advocacy. Where did the passion come from? Where did that fight start from?
I think the fight starts in being a woman, right? In being born a girl in South Asia, you're naturally kind of born and conditioned into this culture, these traditions, these environments that if you are exposed, like I have been, because I've been born in an urban environment, to a fairly privileged sort of background, that you're exposed to a lot of things outside what your country's cultural norms and traditions kind of dictate. So then you feel a little unsettled, right? You realize that certain things, there's a little bit of an injustice to what you're allowed to do as opposed to what the men are allowed to do. Then you grow up seeing certain things happening where there's a lot of normalization of human rights violations. I'm not going to call them women's rights because they are human rights, right? So when you see stuff like that, and when you're someone like me who gets very easily offended and wants to change things, and you have a big mouth and you start using it, and you realize that when you do use it, because very few women do use it, that you are heard, that makes you realize that the voice matters and you can actually create a tangible difference using it. So I guess the whole advocacy happened early adulthood, because I was brought up in that whole in a culture where so many things happened to me because I was a girl, and so many things that I was not responsible for, but I was blamed for because I was the girl. And I realized into my young adulthood that speaking about it was what made that different for me, and as well as for others around me. So I guess that's how the advocacy started.
Talking about using your voice, let's talk about the show, talking about taboos. How did that come about?
So again, it's pretty much the same thing, that a lot of things that I went through in my personal life, I didn't have a support system, or I didn't think I had a support system, because I was raised in a culture to say you keep your secrets. Whatever you go through, if it's not socially acceptable to talk about it, and if you don't have the knowledge, because a lot of the time when it comes to things like women's rights, when it comes to things like, you know, comprehensive sexual education, which we don't have in the country, when it comes to the violation of your rights, you don't really learn about these things in school. You don't understand who to talk to, how to talk to anyone about it. You're ashamed. There's a lot of stigma. So when I went through certain things and I could not talk about it to anyone, it led to a lot of mental health issues. It led to a lot of personal kind of isolation, a lot of fear, a lot of loneliness. And it was only later on when I started engaging with human rights organizations or women's work that I realized I'm not the only one who's been through a lot of this stuff. And when I started sharing my stories with others who could relate, there was a lot of catharsis, there was a lot of healing. And that I realized is actually what breaks a lot of problems, but breaks the barriers of these loneliness and isolation, is when you're able to talk, when you're able to share and you don't feel judged, you don't feel criticized, you don't feel stigmatized for something that you have been through, for a human experience. And when you realize that you're not the only one, that there's somebody out there who's been through it, that takes away that loneliness, that breaks that trap of mental kind of depression and desperation that develops. So when I realized the power of sharing, the power of talking, that's when I thought this needs to happen on a larger scale. It can't be just little, rooms with support circles of like a handful of people sharing. This needs to happen on a national level. I have a background in media. I've been in program presenting, and because of my background in theater, I know I'm comfortable in front of cameras, I'm comfortable in front of audiences, and I thought I have this facility, the voice, the ability to talk, the ability to relate to a lot of issues, predominantly with women's issues. But I didn't have money, so YouTube. The good thing about this day and age is there is that free media that everybody's on. So it was pretty easy to set that up. I collaborated with a good friend of mine, Shifani Rifai, at the time when we started, because she's a filmmaker. She's the technical side of it. She did the filming and the editing, and I did the talking, and I had circles of friends who could relate to a lot of the issues and the topics that we cared about. And that's how it started. And then kind of snowballed and became a much bigger thing where we went beyond just women's issues. We started talking about all social issues, environmental issues, animal rights, legal, political, social, cultural issues. And then we started, Shifani had to step down after our first season because she had a lot going on with her personal life as well. And this was like a lot. So I just kept it going, and again had other friends who engaged and volunteered to be a part of the process and the production. And we've kept going somehow or the other.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Now, apart from your work in women advocacy and in the show as well, you are also in the arts, right?
Yeah.
I know that you've taken part in Shakespeare Back in School, won Best Actress. So can you tell us a little bit about that side?
The arts was my escape for a lot of my childhood. Again, that thing of if you can't express it at home or in school, you express it on stage and it's allowed. You can be as dramatic or as you want and nobody's going to tell you to shut up because you're supposed to do it on stage. And to get away from a lot of stuff that was going on in my head, it was easy as an escape mechanism to just pretend I wasn't me. And that's, in school I loved that. And I guess my ability to escape was a little better than other people in school. So again, then, I got recognized in school by taking part in the inter-school stuff, the Shakespeare stuff. And then when you have some recognition, when you win those awards, that becomes, a high because finally you're good at something. Finally, you're acceptable in something. And then that motivates you, right? And so that's kind of how that love of theatre developed. It's still very much an escape mechanism, get away from reality. And then, of course, through the school Shakespeare drama competition, there were outside directors. Mr. Andrew David, the late Uncle Andrew, is the first person who discovered me while he was directing a Shakespeare for school. And he put me in my first public performance out of school. That got, noticed, media reviews, Then Jerome came along, conscripted me to the workshop players. Then suddenly I met a family of people who were as weird as I was, where I felt a lot more accepted and I felt I belonged, because it was a mad, histrionic bunch. And so just doing my thing. I don't think we have a lot of women in English theatre. We have very few, because again, that whole thing of, girls not being allowed to get on stage, girls not being allowed to perform beyond a certain point, because of the nighttime rehearsals, the public nature of performances and things like that. So again, the opportunities came by because I was one of the few at that time. Now we have more, but at that time. So that grew and it became a nice thing to do, because people didn't tell me to get off stage and shut up there again.
Now, you recently took on a new job role, which congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
So you are now the Senior Technical Advisor in Advocacy and Accountability for the IPPS South Asia region.
Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Just imagine what that will look like on a visiting card, right?
Yeah. So what do you think will be the hardest part of this new job?
The hardest part, because I've been in the job for 2 months now, almost coming on 2 months, is that I've come from a background in advertising and creative work, and I have 22 years of that, and I am going into a completely new territory now, because it is not advertising, it's actually for an international NGO, advocacy for causes that I care about, women's rights, it's sexual and reproductive health rights, mainly. That's kind of the umbrella terminology for what I do. So you're talking about LGBTQI rights, women's rights, children's rights, community sexual rights, comprehensive sexual education, and it's a regional role, whereas I've always worked in Sri Lanka. So this particular role, I'm overlooking 9 countries in my advocacy role, because it's for the regional office of IPPF. So it's about building, again, advocacy. It's about building movements in communities in these countries. It's about engaging with governments and working on policy and legal reforms, changing the way rights work in governments and in countries. You're talking about South Asia, where it's the most restrictive and repressive countries when it comes to human rights, women's queer rights. So in the last 2 months, I've just been like, it's like the LP gas cylinder has blown in my face, because I went into it without knowing how this works, because I've never worked in the development sector. I've only engaged with causes as a sort of an activist or an advocate, somebody who supported causes. And here now I'm responsible for the cause. I'm responsible for building a voice for this cause on a national level, international level. So understanding the language, the institutional language, understanding the politics, the bureaucracy, the red tape, understanding how to engage with governments, how to get them on board with it's things like abortion rights, and we're trying to decriminalize homosexuality, and then you're talking about child marriages, and to understand why is it that not only governments but societies, cultures, traditions are so opposed to these changes, because again, we're living in a part of the world where a lot of this is normalized, a lot of this is okay. And trying to fight that and yet not fight it, because you don't want to create barriers. So the biggest challenge, I think, is just right now just wrapping my head around, how do I do that? What do I do? What is the language I use? Learning not to be an activist, because I can't just sit and shout. There's a lot of diplomacy that I have to use now, which is not my key strength. There's a lot of empathy, understanding why certain things are the way they are, the histories, the political histories, and the nuances. understanding the differences from country to country. What works in India can't work in Sri Lanka, can't work in Afghanistan, which is another country that comes under IPPF. And so for me personally, beyond the technical work that I am now expected to do, it's about also taking care of myself in this, because there's a lot that I can't believe. There's so much justice that we need out there, and I am trying to be professional about it and not let it affect me, because it can be very draining, it can be very scary sometimes. The responsibility, the weight of that responsibility of if you get something wrong, somebody loses their rights. And you feel like now it's a much bigger thing. It's not just you sitting and talking about it, it's you doing. And if you don't do, that's yours. You're accountable. If you say tick off some politician or some parliamentarian whose signature you need, and if that doesn't go right, then years and years and years worth of lobbying and all that, reforms, policies, drafting, whatever, all that work just goes away. So I have to be very, very careful, and that's the biggest challenge for me, being very careful with myself, with the work, with understanding my responsibility, and also not losing my mind, because it's a lot of work. Yeah.
Wow. Well, we definitely wish you luck with that.
Thank you. I'm still learning. Still learning. I have to say I'm not an expert at it. So again, just keeping up with the rest of the NGO world that has been doing this for years and years. I'm a newcomer, so I'm learning, and I'm like, well, these people are legit.
All right, well, we have come to the end of our burning questions.
Thanks.
But before we end, we like to end on a lighter note.
Okay.
And we have a little game planned for you.
Okay.
It's called Living's Got to Know.
Okay.
Rapid fire round questions. So
right.
think fast.
Okay.
Would you rather throw away love or money?
Money.
What was your favorite toy growing up?
God, I can't think fast. I didn't have cats and dogs. Like toys were like a non-entity. Yeah, they existed, but it was the cats and dogs. Yeah.
Okay. What is the weirdest thing you've ever eaten?
Oh. What, I don't know. I don't think I've eaten anything particularly weird.
No?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not very experimental with my food, unfortunately.
When were you the happiest?
I can't tell you. It's personal.
If you could trade lives with someone, who would you pick?
Oprah. Just to know what that life is like for one day.
To shout, you got a car, you got a car, you get a car.
Yeah, like not to give out the car. Have you seen the way that woman lives?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Okay. Would you rather have 10 hobbies or one passion?
One passion.
If you were suddenly transported to any other planet, how would you assess the situation?
Are there cats and dogs here?
I don't know.
Can we? No, that would be my assessment. Like, I would not want to exist on a planet that doesn't have some furry being there.
Okay. Okay. If you could use one word for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Faith.
Okay. If you had the world's attention for 30 seconds, what would you say?
Speak up! Like, speak up, for God's sakes. Don't keep it in you. Just talk about it. We need to talk about these things.
Very good. Okay. Who would play you in the movie of your life?
Oh God. Somebody who's not going to lose their minds, right? Who would play me? I don't know.
Who would you like playing you? Put it that way.
You know what? And this is very controversial, right? But Sunny Leon.
What?
Sunny Leon. Not for what she's good at, right? Or what she's known for. But because I identify with the fact that she is very misunderstood.
Okay.
She has been labeled because of choices she made in her past, but she made those choices. And the world seems to be treating her like she should be victimized by those choices. She made those choices independently. She wasn't victimized to those choices. Nobody made her do what she did. And she's confident about it. She's not ashamed of it. She's decided to change her path, and she's just taken that on. I like her fearlessness. I like her independence. I like the way that she's, telling the world to go fly a kite and doing her thing, despite what everybody throws at her. So I admire that about her.
Okay.
I wouldn't make the choices that she made, please note, but I think she can do a pretty good job of being
Okay.
me.
This is actually funny because the next question is,
Yeah.
what would your stripper name be?
What would my stripper name be? I don't think I should strip for the benefit of the rest of the world. I don't think I should be stripping because that's not going to make the industry any money whatsoever. I've never thought of a stripper name. I don't know.
There's a game, right? There's a formula. I think you put your last pet, your childhood pet name, and the street you
Yeah,
or something.
yeah. Pink pudding.
Nice.
Okay.
Okay. What's the strangest thing you've ever fallen in love with?
Oh man.
I like that answer. Okay, what is the smartest thing you've ever done?
Not listened to people. Not listened to people who've told me who I should be and what I should do. Because otherwise, by now, I probably have about 4 kids and be sitting at home darning some man's socks. So I'm happy that I didn't listen.
Very good. Okay, final one. Do you save or do you spend?
I spend. Not on myself though. That's the thing. I spend on everybody else and everything else. I would say 90% of my salary goes on animals, animal welfare, pet welfare, spoiling my cats and dogs, and then other people, friends, family people. I donate a lot. I shouldn't be because I don't have the money to donate, but yeah, I don't spend much on myself, but my money just goes on everything, like my show, because it's a self-funded thing primarily, so yeah.
Nice. Well, we reached the end of our show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And that's all the time we have for you this week. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to catch the latest episode. Thank you for watching and stay safe.
Merry Christmas!